I have much more education, much more knowledge on how to make a good game than how to write a good novel. But unsurprisingly, I found that a lot of the same advice applies. That a lot of the things that help me make compelling games also make me make any story compelling. And I'm here wondering if other writers have the access or maybe even the curiosity to research about game design. So I thought it could be interesting in this video here to just present a couple of nuggets of knowledge, some precious gems of game design that helped me while writing my latest novel. But the thing is, I could talk here for 17 hours straight because a lot of the game design advice was useful to me. So to record this video in a sort of normal length, I had to choose the theme, a guiding principle. And the one I chose for this video was Mark Rosewater, who is one of my favorite game designers in the world. He's the lead creative mind for the game Magic the Gathering for the past, 23 years or something like that. Wait, let me get a Magic card. This is how a Magic card looks like. This is a game about a battle of wits between two wizards. So yeah, it's a pretty popular game since I was a child. And one thing worth mentioning about this game is that they need to create new worlds constantly. And also with their former worlds, they need to evolve the narrative of that plane so that they can create new sets of cards and sell it to the players. So they have such a honed world building machine there that, of course, it's not exactly what writers will need to build their worlds that are in pages and not in the game, but still there's something precious to be learned from a team that's been creating several worlds for more than 20 years. And the thing about Rosewater is that not only he's a brilliant game designer, but man, does he like to talk about making magic. He has more than 700 podcast episodes recorded, and he's still making them. It's really a lot. I'm gonna use here some points that he made in a very famous talk he gave at the GDC, the Game Developers Conference, a couple of years ago. But I'm gonna also mix and match with a lot of knowledge that I learned listening to his podcast for hundreds and hundreds of hours. So you'll also find information here that's not on his talk. Okay, let's go for the lessons. Nugget of knowledge number 1. Be more afraid to bore your players than to challenge them. And what this means in the game design world is, if you make a game that's too easy, that the challenges are too simple to overcome, you will bore your players. They will look at an enemy 20 kilometers ahead and they already know how to beat them. On the other hand, if you make a game that's too punishing, that's too hard, you will frustrate your players. They'll try and try and try again and will always hit a brick wall. Of course, different audiences, different kinds of players will look for different types of challenge. A player who really enjoys Kirby is not looking for a complicated challenge. It's almost impossible to lose this game. And a player that is looking for Dark Souls or Cuphead is indeed looking for a challenge, and they won't mind dying as much as other players would. But no matter who your audience is, no matter where in the spectrum they are, you need to fine-tune it anyway to find just that sweet spot of challenge. And I don't think this is crazy talk for writers. I think most writers understand that your text needs to be interesting, exciting. You can't really bore your readers, but also needs to be accessible, penetrable. People need to understand what the hell you're talking about. This is not really the nugget of knowledge here. The gold here is, because of the way the feedback process works, game studios tend to make their games a little bit too easy. And what I've been experiencing from this writing world, I believe that authors make the same mistake. If you write something crazy in your book, something disruptive, something either groundbreaking or completely broken in the first place, this will raise alarm, this will attract attention. So whoever's giving you feedback on your book, your peer reviewers or maybe your editor, I'm not sure, they will look at that, they will pay attention to this, and when they give you feedback, they will imbue that level of attention that they felt to the feedback they're given. Hey, this is crazy, this is too much. But let's say it's the other way around, it's the other side of the spectrum. You have a dialogue that's too slow or simply boring. Your feedback givers may give you the exact advice you need. Hey, this is too slow. I kinda didn't really like it, lost my attention in the middle of it. But they will not imbue that feedback with that sense of urgency, with that level of attention they give to the disruptive thing. So you will grab those two pieces of advice that should be equally powerful, but you'll not judge them in the same way. You will be more likely to listen to the advice that came with a lot of passion, that came with a lot of urgency. And this other one, you might think, you know what? Yeah, sure, let's try to fine-tune this dialogue here, but one boring dialogue will not kill my book. It's a matter of the attention that's given to those two pieces of feedback that should have the same value, but end up not having. Also remember this thing about feedback when you're giving feedback. Might come in handy. Okay, let's move on. Nugget of knowledge number 2. Don't confuse interesting with fun. I know those are very mushy words. It may mean many things, but in the way that Rosewater puts them is interesting being intellectual stimulation versus fun being emotional stimulation. And of course, you want to have both in your book. Everybody does. Interesting ideas, relatable characters, a plot that it's surprising, but also things that make you think in the shower about the book the next day. All of this is good. But he argues, and I agree, that we humans, we see ourselves as very intellectual creatures. We are creatures making sense of the world and understanding the mechanics of the universe. But truth is, we are more emotional than intellectual. And especially when we're interacting with art, this is the moment that we have the most, the door really open for emotions to flow. And seeing people as emotional beings when they are reading a book or playing a game gives us a good hint of what should really be important there, which is fun, not interesting. This feels like a weird thing for me to add here, because I think I myself have a high threshold of withstanding not fun but interesting things. Like, I read Bread Moss and I was fascinated by the descriptions of the rocks. But I understand that most people are not like me. Most people find this just very frustrating, and I think respecting your readers is more important than your own personal preferences. And I'm not even just talking about science fiction or something very academic. Think fantasy. Tolkien. A lot of people find The Lord of the Rings, and especially the Silmarillion, really boring. Because Tolkien, you know how it goes. It's the way that the flower opens in the morning dew next to the island of the dolphins, and you're like, God, okay. I mean, I enjoy it, okay, but I understand people who don't. Now, if you grab another fantasy author that also does a lot of descriptions, but has always this fun in the back of his pen, Terry Pratchett, there's a lot of description, especially in the introductions of Terry Pratchett books. But if you ever read him talking about Ankh-Morpork, you know it's an emotional description of the city. I don't really exactly know how the city looks like, but I know it's dirty. I know I should feel the danger around me. I know it smells of stale beer that probably I poured here yesterday, because everybody here is kind of a thug, a thief. It's much more emotional. There's a lesson there. Yes, you might argue that Tolkien sold more books and was more culturally relevant than Pratchett. Yes, I agree, but I would argue back that if he was writing those books today, they wouldn't fare so well. Times change, folks. We need to live in our times. Okay, let's go for the third and last one for this video. Nugget of knowledge number 3. Allow your players the ability to make the game personal. which is an interesting one to add here, because of course games are interactive. So this idea of you making the choices there, of course it is personal. It is a bit of you in the game world. Many times there are customization. You create your avatars. In the specific case of Magic the Gathering, you make your own deck of cards with your choices. But still, I think there's something very important for a novelist like myself as well. Maybe it's a little more towards the fantasy writers like me, but I still think it's super interesting. Let me start talking about this in the context of games. There is a specific kind of game that wants you to believe that you see on the screen is your story. Not that character story, but your story. And of course, there are many ways, there are many mechanics, many tools that they use for you to believe in that. The most cliche one, most used one, is the ability for you to create your own avatar, your own manifestation in that game world. Not that the avatar needs to look like you, but it represents you. You have chosen the appearance of that avatar, you've chosen the name, which is a very important thing. Most people name their characters after themselves, their own names or their nicknames. But yeah, there is a lot of enchantment, a lot of narrative power in the player believing that it's them, even for a second, that it's their story happening. Cool. So now you might tell me, of course, Jorian, this is how games behave. Games are an interactive medium, and this is their characteristic. Of course, the players can believe that they are there on the screen, because when they press right, the creature or the person or whatever goes right. But in the book, this is different, right? The set of words is there, and if the reader wants to go right, the character will never really heed the commands of the reader, right? Yes, in a way, this is partially correct. But have you ever thought, which Hogwarts house would you be sorted into? Have you? There is a style of world building. There is a way to write a narrative with enough open doors so that the readers can't help but to wonder, would I be sorted into Gryffindor? Or would I be a Ravenclaw? Of course I would be a Gryffindor. Think superpowers in the Marvel universe, or Standos in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. You're following the story of those characters, and they have uncanny abilities, and they meet other people with uncanny abilities. And of course, your brain put pieces of the story together. There are many more out there that I'm not reading about, that I'm not seeing right now. Which means that there are infinite stories among this universe. I could be one of them. I could have one of those uncanny abilities and live a whole epic narrative that wouldn't even meet these people I'm reading about right now. And this is a particular style of open world building that allows the readers to make it personal. It helps if your plot doesn't feel like the only relevant thing in that universe. That if your heroes fail, every single sentient being will be obliterated. For example, when I was reading Dune, which is a book that I love, I really love Dune, I felt like there was probably no other story as relevant as the one I was reading, because that story would change everything. While when I was reading Harry Potter, yeah, sure, that was a relevant conflict and millions of people would be affected by it. But, you know, it was about England, and there were wizards in the United States and Brazil and Australia that maybe hadn't even heard of Lord Voldemort. So, for example, in Marvel, yes, fine, the Avengers saved the world. Cool, it's true. For that period of time, They were the most important heroes in that universe, yes. But man, does that world need saving? Because if you really, go into Marvel, the world needs saving so many times by so many different groups of people. So fine, maybe this time you were not an important hero, but nothing stops you for being the most important hero next time that the world needs saving again and again and again. In JoJo, I think season 4, the one in Morio, we learn about those arrows that if you're pierced and you survive, you will develop a stand ability. Anyone can be a stand user. So those pieces of openness in all of those world buildings, they make people wonder. They almost give people the permission to write fan fiction that can't be denied. It can't be proven. It's not canon, but it can't be denied. Just a side note here, I don't believe that all books need to use this technique. I don't believe that all books should have open world building. As I said, I really love Dune, but it's just something interesting to think about. Again, another tool in our tool belt. That's it for today, folks. Thank you for your attention. I hope this little bit of Rosewater knowledge was useful, was inspiring. It is certainly inspiring to me. If you're interested in game design, actually he has a lot of material out there, but you kinda need to play Magic the Gathering to really understand what he's talking about. Still, I would highly recommend, as I mentioned, there's a video linked below. And if you are interested in more episodes like this about game theory and game design philosophy in general, I could make a bunch. So please let me know in the comments or tweet at me. And yeah, I'll see you folks next time around. Ciao.